Hey guys, we're back, and this time we're making beef stew. Guys, it is so worth it, okay? Please click on the link in the description so you can have the full recipe. You don't want to miss a step. I'm telling you, it's so flavorful, it's so good. My kids love it, and all I will say is make sure, if you can, make a larger portion because it's gonna go fast. And so you want to have garlic, which I always say smash your garlic, then chop it up. Smashing the garlic and chopping it up, it releases a sweetness, and is really flavorful to the stew. You don't always smash garlic, but for this particular stew, you want to definitely smash that garlic and chop it up as much as possible. And it's about 7 to 8 cloves of garlic that I'm using, so it's a lot of garlic. But it's okay. It's gonna be worth it. Also, you have 2 onions. So as you can see, I'm chopping up the onions. Can't go wrong with onions. You can roughly chop the onions. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just roughly chop them. If you like them super, defined or super uniformed, that's perfectly fine as well. But yeah, so you want to definitely chop those onions. And now I have the cuts of the beef chuck. I use beef chuck, but for this stew, it's so flavorful that you could honestly use cheaper cuts of beef if you have to. But I always prefer to use the chuck beef. And as you can see, I'm seasoning it with salt and pepper, and you want to season it generously. Like, don't skip out on this. When you click on the link in the bio, you'll see the measurements. Use it. It's okay. It's worth it. These are large chunks of beef, so you want to definitely use that. It's going to be worth it. Trust me. And so as you can see, I use like a peppercorn grinder. It's not as much salt as it seems like, guys, so don't worry. I didn't pour it in there. And so then you want to season the meat on all sides, and then you do that. You do it for a minute for each batch. And as you can see, I'm adding in the onions, the garlic, some balsamic vinegar. Then you want to kind of stir that up for you want to get it stirred up maybe like 3 minutes or so till the onions are cooked and some translucent. You want to get a nice good sear. Don't burn the onion, garlic. You never want burnt garlic, okay? And also note, please do this on high heat. Now I just added like a 6-ounce can of tomato paste, and so I'm just kind of stirring it in just to get it all mixed in. You only want to do this for about a minute. I just kind of fasten this part up because as you can see, don't skip this step either, guys. I'm telling you, each thing builds the flavor. So now you're adding the meat back into the pan. And remember, when you're only searing the meat for a minute, so it's still supposed to have pink insides. So I'm adding the meat back into the pan. Look how gorgeous it is. Oh, isn't it beautiful? So I'm adding the meat back into the pan, and now I'm going to sprinkle flour. This is going to create that hearty, thick sauce that you want in a stew. And so I'm going to mix this up. Please don't skip this part. You want to mix it until the flour is completely dissolved. Once the flour is dissolved, there you go. Still got a few more stirring to go. And then once it's completely dissolved, then it's time for the next step. Okay. And so, yeah, as you can see, I'm still kind of making sure. You want to make sure don't skip this. Just be patient. It's love. It's a labor of love, but it's so worth it. And so now there's no more flour. You can see it's all gone. There you go. Now, you want to pour in the beef broth. So it's about 4 cups of beef broth. Also, 2 cups of water. People use red wine, but for this purpose, I'm not using cooking wine because I'm just letting you know it can be just as flavorful without it. As you can see, I just sprinkled sugar. People like to skip this part. I'm not a sugar fan in stews, but always add sugar. It's not a lot. It's just like a teaspoon worth. And then you also want to add in the thyme and the bay leaf. As you can see, I'm cutting chunks of carrots. You want to do so diagonally. Cuts of carrot can be really nice and chunky. Remember, it's a hearty beef stew, so you want hearty beef cuts of carrots. You want hearty beef cuts of carrots. It's super important. Now, feel free to skip past this part because I'm just peeling potatoes, talking to my oldest daughter who, loves to have conversations, all the while telling her she needed to do her chores, but it's okay. So I'm talking and peeling potatoes, but in this moment, I did want to really talk about this stew. This stew is so good. Guys, I'm telling you, you don't want to miss out on a stew like this. It's really flavorful. It's really good. And the beauty about this is one of those stews that, when leftovers are better the next day, it's so good the first day and it's even better the next day. One thing when I like I always say, when you're making a stew like this, try to make a larger portion. The recipe that I have calls for 6 servings. If you can double it up, it is worth it. Especially if you're a busy parent or just busy at all, whether you have children or not, and you live in a busy life, but you want a flavorful meal prep, this beef stew is it. I would say get maybe double it up, right? And it's so good. Okay, it's so good. And even in a Dutch oven, it's still it won't overflow. It's really good. So yeah, as you can see, I'm kind of like talking to my daughter while I am peeling potatoes. Sorry, the camera didn't quite get when I was cutting them, but I'm cutting the potatoes in large chunks. So I'm peeling the potatoes and cutting them in large chunks, right? Because once again, it's a hearty beef stew, and so you want it cut into large chunks. While we're here, like I said, I didn't edit this part because I really did want to have a conversation. You guys tell me, how do you feel about from scratch? Let me know if you're enjoying the content. And so now I'm adding, I actually forgot to tell you, right here, you would see that I actually had put the Dutch oven into the actual oven, and so the stew was cooking for 2 hours. So this is a result of 2 hours of cooking. So you'll see that you'll see the sauce is nice and thick, and so the sauce is nice and thick, and now I'm stirring it up. And I added the potatoes and the carrots. I'm going to let it cook back in the oven for 1 more hour. And so, yeah, isn't it good? Look how gorgeous that looks. And that's it. So good. Feel free to serve it with a side salad. It's really great with rice, but it's so good on its own. All right, guys. Bye.